And joining me now on the show is Steve Beaman. Steve is the CEO and founder of Elevare Technologies, creating the digital economy for global businesses and using the metaverse as a tool. Steve, welcome back to Compass.
It's my pleasure. I'm so glad to be on with you.
Now, from this particular story, and I'll quote from it, despite presenting itself to investors and the public as a sophisticated group of cryptocurrency exchanges and businesses, the FTX group was a self-described family business. Steve, can you draw a comparison now to Bernie Madoff?
I think it's fascinating that you bring that up. And that's maybe one of the more intuitive things I've heard brought up about this, because you clearly, and the most recent court documents show that his parents were in bed with him on this all the way up. Now, I do think there's a bit of a difference in that Bernie Madoff, I think, was much more aware of what he was doing than SBF was. I think Sam Bankman-Fried got caught up in something he didn't fully understand. He thinks he's the smartest kid in the bunch. He thinks he's the brightest bulb around. And when all push comes to shove, he wasn't. And I think at the end of the day, it was as much his naivete as anything. So that's where the analogy would break down. But I do think there's a lot of common ground. Bernie Madoff never meant to be a criminal. He got a little bit, dipped his toe in it, and it just went from there. And that's the same thing that happened here.
Now, the parents of Bankman-Fried are now being sued for receiving gifts of, a $10 million gift, a $16 million luxury home in the Bahamas. Now, the couple either knew or ignored bright red flags revealing that their son, Sam Bankman-Fried, and other FTX insiders were orchestrating a vast fraudulent scheme to profit and promote their personal and charitable agendas at their expense. Steve, as a CEO yourself, can you point out some of the errors that were made here in this assumption?
Oh, I think at the core of it is a lack of intellectual honesty. If you look at what created the real problem between Alameda Research and FTX, it was this token that FTX had created. And a token and a crypto are very similar. They have values that are specious, to put it mildly. He was valuing his token, his internally used token, for an enormous amount of money. And that made the balance sheet of Alameda Research look strong. Well, the reality was it wasn't worth anything. Now, was that intentional misrepresentation, or was it just incredible naivete and self-dishonesty? His parents, again, the same question I would ask is, were they really aware of where the money was coming and going? Did they know, or were they just taking gravy because it was there? And I guess I'm leaning toward the latter. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, because I think there are very few people who really understand crypto trading and the way these tokens and cryptos are valued to begin with.
Just as an aside, I remember going back to the noughties and the original tech internet boom, where people were literally just valuing their company, and they would say, look, we're going to do this, that, and the other. We value the company at $20 million. I remember doing a property investment course some 20 years ago, and the person running the course actually said, we went through this stage and we valued the company at 10 million. And we thought, well, if we can value it at 10, why can't we value it at 20? And he said, to cut a long story short, we ended up valuing it at 50 million, sold all the shares, and a couple of years later, everyone went broke. And that's just how the deal worked. This FTX and crypto seems to be an extension of that same crazy scheme where you literally just invent things out of thin air and people just go along with it. Like the great
is. And go back to Lehman Brothers when they collapsed in 2008. They had valued their real estate portfolio at $70 billion. When all was said and done, I think the value put on it was $15 billion. The rest of that's just evaporated. And I think that does go on. And as CEO of a company, and again, we're a company, we're not public, we're a private company. It's easy to put whatever value you want on that. Do you value it on cash in the bank per share? Do you value it on the opportunity? They're very different numbers. And I think oftentimes it gets into who you're talking to. And so in their case, they were just taking this view that their internal valuation was reasonable, even though it was completely ridiculous.
In a second story, Bankman-Fried, who was jailed again last month for tampering with witnesses, is arguing before the court to be freed as it impedes his right to free speech and to prepare for the trial. Now, the judges are saying, well, you should have known this already. But given this was an informal license to print money and Bankman-Fried was literally lining the pockets of Democrat politicians, do you think that he had been operating under the idea that anything goes, that he was somehow part of this big club?
I think you hit something there, and we chatted about it earlier a bit. It's part of a culture in the United States in the 20-somethings, and that is this entitlement mentality that they're smarter than the boomers, they know more than the boomers, so just stay out of it, we'll do it our way. when in fact, this guy had no corporate controls. And those of us who've been around the block for more than a year or two know there are corporate controls you put on that kind of money. We've all made mistakes, and that happens. And I think, there are honest mistakes, and then there are stupid mistakes, and then there are dishonest mistakes. And I think Sam got caught up in just a catastrophically stupid mistake where he thought he was smarter than everybody. And at the end of the day, the markets are smarter than all of us combined.
It is the story that keeps on giving. Sam Bankman-Fried, this young kid, this upstart, this billionaire that all seems to fall apart. It is the American dream turned nightmare for so many investors. I just want to thank you today, Steve, for your time again on Compass.
You're very kind. Thank you so much.